Well, we're ready to take a trip through history via cool classic cars. And if you love cars, you're going to love yesterday's ride, Classic Car Museum here in Williamston. I'm joined by Jim. He's the owner here. Jim, you have quite the collection here.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to have you with us today.
Yeah, I mean, I said Jack Roper needs to be here on this story because he loves classic cars, and he would be a kid in an actual candy store coming here and taking a look at some of these cars. So I'm sure he'll be paying you a visit. Tell me how this all started. I was asking you if you were a car lover from early on, and that wasn't necessarily the case.
No, it wasn't. As I was growing up, as long as I had something to drive and get me from one place to the other, that's all I was interested in. But when my son was in high school, a good friend of his, he and his dad got him interested in classic cars. His son, my friend's son had one, and I ended up getting my son Mike one while he was in college, and it just kind of evolved from there. Never really had any intention to get this far with it, but we certainly have enjoyed the ride.
It snowballed.
It did.
It is snowballed out of control. So how many cars do you have here? And then tell me how the museum came together. Did you decide to just put a couple on show and then it went from there? It
was not something I really planned to do. I just needed a place to put my cars, and this building was empty to begin with. It originally was our family's hardware store, and we had moved into the shopping center next door. And I thought I'd just cut a hole in the wall and put a garage door and move the cars over here. And this just evolved. I never really went into doing it planning to come out where we are today, but I had several friends that encouraged me, and we went to sign shows and looked for the decorations for it and so forth. So that's how it just kind of evolved.
How did you acquire a lot of these cars? Was it going to shows or?
Various places. I've been to Barrett-Jackson many times out in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona. Bought a couple of cars out there at that location, and another auction close to Barrett-Jackson, Russo and Steele. Bought a couple of cars there. And just word of mouth when I hear about a car that I'm interested in. And I've had quite a few more than these through the years, probably 20, 25 cars, but just kept paring down to the ones that were most interesting to me.
So you've cut back a little bit. You've slimmed down the collection a bit.
As I am here with limited space, when I bought one, I'd have to sell one to make space for it.
So it's a space thing. It's not your love of cars is not diminished. It's just the space to put them. It's gotten smaller. Talk about some of the cars that we have behind us. And I know that there's they're all special, but then they all have their own stories to them. But there are some that are very rare.
Well, they are fairly rare. One of the rarest would be the 64 GTO convertible 4-speed. It's a 389 tri-power car, and those are very rare. The 64 GTO is attributed to be the first muscle car. John DeLorean, that was one of the head guys in GM back in the day, was attributed to starting the craze of the muscle car. So that was the car that started it all. And
there's some other ones that people maybe know from different movies and stuff, and I know you have a mural on the wall here that has a little the James Dean effect on it.
Right. The one behind us here, it looks black. I'm sure it'll show up black, but it's a real deep blue. And that car is the same car that James Dean drove in Rebel Without a Cause back in the early 50s, the movie for that, and one that has helped propel his career, or did propel his career.
Do you feel like you're preserving pieces of history? Because if you look around the museum, you see lots of different artifacts and memorabilia from that time period, like on display. It seems like it almost could just be like a frozen in time, a capsule. Is that something that's important to you?
It's really what appeals to me. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and things that bring back the memories of my childhood and growing up, and just being able to share that history with people, I think is moved me forward with this.
Talk about people that come to visit here. I imagine seeing them kind of flip that switch where they go back to the 1950s, or it's someone who's never lived in that time. We're talking about the car hop on some of the cars and people not knowing what that is. It's both like an educational tool for folks that didn't grow up in that time period, and also like a memory lane for folks that did.
It's a combination, and you get great responses from all generations. The guys like me that are older and grew up in this era, the memories come flooding back. but also when you see teenagers or even young kids, they walk through the door and their eyes just light up and they're just amazed.
Can anyone come? Are there certain times and days that you're open?
I'm not really ever open to the public per se, but I welcome people. I always keep a note on the front door with my cell phone number that I invite them to call me if I'm in town and it's where I can come. I'll be more than happy. My business is right next door to this building, so it's just 5 minutes I can be over here if I'm available. But I love sharing it with people that enjoy it. We have special events in town. Our Spring Water Festival, we always have it open that day for people that are in town visiting the park, which is right across the street from us. And we have a Freedom Weekend that we celebrate the Saturday before July 4th here with a big firework display and cruise-in that's right out in our parking lot in front of our building here. So we welcome people in on special events like that. And we even have community meetings and events that I welcome them to use, whether it's an economic development committee or something Envision Williamston has going on.
Maybe it'll bring some folks here to kind of experience what Williamston is all about.
Williamston has a lot to offer, and I think anyone that hasn't made it over this way is really missing a treat. Again, right across the main street, we have our Mineral Springs Park that goes back to the mid-1850s with the origin there with our spring, and we have a number of things going over there right now. The Christmas park, if you want to drive through and see all the lights and the displays that are set up over there. Williamston's got a lot to offer, and people that haven't been need to make a trip over.
Is there a car that you've always wanted to have that you've never gotten or still have your eye on?
I guess my dream car I do have. It's the one that's not on camera right now, but it's a Mustang 1969 Boss 429. That's a car that I've always dreamed of. And ironically, a guy that I went to high school with had the car. He bought it in 1970 and kept it for over 40 years. And I was fortunate enough to be able to talk him out of that one, and I've completely restored it. So that's my ultimate dream car, and I'm fortunate enough to have it.
That's cool. So that one's special for you. So there's nothing else in the twinkle in your eye right now, but you never know, right?
Well, if the opportunity presented itself, I've always been interested in a 70 Challenger Hemi. I don't have a Chrysler product, Mopar car buffs call it. So that might be one for the future. And
you were saying, like, none of these are necessarily for sale, but if you made the right offer, you'd let it go.
Probably.
Probably italicized, highlighted, asterisks.
Right.
Jim, thank you so much for having us in. And anything else you want to say about your collection here, and or something that we may have missed? There's so many stories, and you talked about how every item in here has a story behind it. So if you want to come in and really take a trip down memory lane and kind of talk about some of those things, that'd be a great opportunity for them to have a conversation.
Sure, I'll be glad to share it with the folks. All of the signs and the various memorabilia in here, the gas pumps from the 50s all the way back. I've got one pump back there that goes back to the teens and 20s, that era and so forth. So there's just so much to appeal to people, and they need to make multiple visits. I've had so many people come in a number of times and they keep saying, was this here, was this here? You can't really absorb it all at one trip.
And even your man cave back there is stuck in a time warp. It's pretty cool.
It is. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for having us out here. And of course, we'll put all that information for you at our website, livingupstatesc.com.